This is brought to you by the Alumni Association of PISJ-ES.
We're talking about understanding gradient. If I tell you that the gradient of the line is 4, what do you understand from this? Now you have to understand that this means that this is simply 4 over 1. Since there's nothing in the denominator here, so we'll just take it as 4 over 1. So the formula was change in the height divided by change in the length. So this means that the line, for every one unit change in the length, the line changes its height by 4 units. If there is a 1 unit change, the line changes its height by 4 units. For example, let me just draw a graph here. This is very important to understand. If you understood this, you will understand the gradient completely. So understand this, guys. For example, the line starts from 0. That is totally my choice. I'm just saying it starts from 0. So if I have a gradient of 4, this means that when it crosses 1, when it completes a distance of 1 in the x-axis, it has completed a distance of 4 in the y-axis. In the next point, for example, in the second 1 meters that it's covering in the x-axis, it would have covered a distance of 4 meters. Again, 4 plus 4 is 8. So the second point will be here. If I just join these 2 points here, it will be something like this. I am not able to join it here perfectly, but this is something what it looks like. This is a straight line, and if you calculate the gradient, you will just see the answer would be 4. So if now another example, let's take another example. For example, the gradient is 4 over 2. This means that for every change in y, the change in x would be given. For example, in this case, for every 2 units that it moves on x, it will be moving 4 units on y. Something like this. For example, this is your axis here. Okay, so this means if I take it here, if for example this is 2 mark here and this is the 4 mark here, so for every 2 that it covers, it would have covered a 4 in y-axis. For another 2, this would cover another 4 if it starts from 0. So the line would be something like this. So you know that 4 over 2 is 2. Simply 4 divided by 2 is 2. So remember, it might not look from the graphs here, but this line with a gradient of 4 will always be steeper, since it will be covering more height. It will, for example, look, just notice this. It's covering 4 meters or 4 units with every 1 unit in x. You know, it's going like this, something like this. However, this takes 4 units with every 2, so it's going something like this. So the one with the greater gradient would be steeper than this one. Here the gradient is 2. You can also take it, if the gradient is given as 2, you can again take it as 2 over 1. For every 1, the height increased by 2. For every 2, the height would increase by 4. For every 4, the height would increase by 8. So it's again simply a ratio of the y, delta y, over delta x. Now let me take another example which would make things a little more clear for you. And this is a different one. For example, you get a gradient of -3 over, for any number, -3 over 4. What does this show you? This, again, you should always tell it to yourself that this means for every 3 units in y-axis, this is delta y, this is delta x. For every 3 units in the y-axis, the graph moves 4 units on the right hand side, on the positive side of x. But this negative sign shows here that for every 4 units on the right hand side, the graph would go down, not up. The point decreases by 3. For example, if I started with, let's say, this is my graph here. For example, I started with an 8. This is the 2 mark, this is the 4 mark, and this is the 6, this is the 8 mark. I am starting from here. Okay? Let's see. So for every 4 in the y-axis, on the x-axis, for every 4 in the x-axis, the graph decreases by 3. So by the time it comes to 4, this would come to 5. 8 minus 3, 5. So this would be my next point here. 4 and 5. Now for another 4, this would again decrease by 3, which means 5 minus 3 is 2. This would come here. The line would be something like, sorry. Okay, now this is retarded, but this is, if you connect the points, you'll get the line. This is the kind of line that you will get, something like this. Okay, so you can see that the line is decreasing. So whenever the line is decreasing, you will have a negative gradient. The answer of your gradient will always be negative. You will get a value something like -3 or -4 or -6 over 2, which is again -3, sorry, -1 over 3, -4 over 5. This would simply mean that the line is decreasing and not increasing. Something like this. If you calculate now, however, let me just clear one more thing. However, if a line is increasing, for example, it was somewhere here originally and it reached to this point, this will always have a positive gradient. For example, a 4, a 2, a 3. However, if given 2 lines, one with a gradient of 4 and the other with a gradient of 2, this would be, if you are asked to just randomly draw, this would be something like this, and this would be something like this. So this would be more steeper, since this would be steeper since its graph, since its gradient is more than gradient here. So this is the negative and the positive gradient. This is basically the interpretation. Let me review quite a few things here that you have learned in this lecture, and kindly ask yourself whether you have actually learned. If you have not, then do tell me so that I can make another video if you want to understand this again, because this is very essential. So this is our review here. Okay, so first of all, gradient is found by y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's see 2 answers. One line here, 2 simultaneous examples. Okay, and one line here. one line here. Okay, now let me see. This one is going like this, okay, for example, and this one comes here like this. Okay, let's find out the gradients. For example, what do we expect first? I expect that since the line is decreasing here, it's coming from a top position to a lower position, the gradient would be negative. This is a sign of negative, I mean, this is what I mean, minus and negative. For here, since the line is reaching a top point, the gradient would be positive. If this point is 8 and this point is 4, let's see, and this point is here, it's 0, and this point is, say, 8 here and 4 here, just random numbers. Let me just check, okay, whether the gradient. First, write down the points. The first point is this one. This is 0 on the x-axis and 8 on the y-axis. This one is 0 on the 4 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis. Now, you can take any point because you don't have a choice really. Okay, so you will notice you don't have a choice. So you can take any point as point 1 and point 2. I am taking this one as point 1 and this one as point 2. The question says the formula says y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2 minus y1, 0 minus 8 divided by x2 minus x1, 4 minus 0. This would give me minus 8 over 4, which is minus 2. A negative gradient. Okay, as expected. However, let's find one for this one. The gradient for this one. The first point, this point is 0, 0. 2 points on the line, 0, 0. And the other point is this one. Let's take this one. This is 8 and 4. 8 on the x-axis, 4 on the y-axis. Okay. So the formula says y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 again. So 4 minus 0 divided by 8 minus 0. This is giving me 4 over 8 and a 1 over 2. Although this is lesser than 1, it's still positive. So this tells me that the line is increasing like this. And this tells me, whenever I see a negative sign, this should tell me that the line is decreasing like this. Now, let's see. From this, we know, we've also learned from this, that a minus 2 means, if you see m is equals to minus 2, you can always replace it with 1. In the denominator, you can just put a 1 right there, since I've told you the reason. Okay, so this means a 1 increase of 1 on the x-axis calls for a decrease of 2 in the y-axis, since it's minus 2. So you can see here, this is 1, 2. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it accurately, but you will be able to make out. Look, for a 1, this came to round about a 6. So for 1 increase, a 2 decrease. For another 1 increase, this came to about half of the line. For the 3, this would come, another increase, this would come to 2, a decrease of 2 in the y-axis. And for 4, 1 more increase, a decrease of 2, which brings it to 0, again, this line. So you can interpret this, and the same goes here. 1 over 2, which means this is positive, so this means an increase of 2 in x-axis would increase 1 in y-axis. So increase of 2 is increasing about 1 in y-axis. An increase of another 2, which is 4, increases it by 1, the y-axis by 1. Increase of another 2, which makes it 6, increases it to 3. And another increase of 2, which brings it to 8, increases 1 here, makes it to 4. So guys, this is gradient, and this is the interpretation of gradient, and you should all be very proper in this interpretation, and you should all know about this, because this is very essential, and you will see how we will relate this to kinematics. So guys, stay tuned.